Chief of Staff of the State Board of Higher Education, Lubna Mian, to take roll.
Right before I take roll, there's just two procedural matters. And one is that for everyone who's online and in this room, by participating in this meeting, you're consenting to recording. So I just want to give that announcement. The second is that if you are here live, we're asking you to please sign the sign-in sheet. This will help us to keep track of the attendance for these hearings, to sort feedback, and also to keep in touch with you. And with that, I'll start the roll call. Mr. Long.
Present.
Dr. Shapira.
Here.
Dr. Bieber.
Here.
Dr. McConnell. Here. Dr. Smith. Mr. Washoe.
Here.
Dr. Allen. Ms. Eston.
Here.
Ms. Sapor. Dr. Laskowski.
She's here.
Dr. Laskowski.
I know she's here. She was waiting to be admitted.
Dr. Laskowski. Yeah. Mr. Eden.
Here.
Dr. Rivera.
Here.
Representative Schweier. Senator Costa. Dr. Secretary Walker.
Present.
Designate Bruder for Senator Costa. Mr. Bruder. Ms. Acri.
Here.
We have quorum.
Sorry to interrupt. My mic had been disabled, but I am here. This is Kara Laskowski.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And Kara, I knew you were there. I saw you waiting in the lobby. So let me welcome everybody to the third of our regional hearings. Unfortunately for me, not there, but for those of you physically present on the very beautiful campus of St. Joe's University in suburban Philadelphia. So we are here today in the southeast region of the state, which, as we know, is an area that is very rich with higher education institutions and resources, and we look forward to a very lively conversation. So let me first thank, on behalf of all of us, our board member, Dr. Cheryl McConnell, who is president of St. Joseph's University, for her and her staff's hospitality in hosting us and for the warm welcome they have given us. And as this third regional meeting unfolds, I want to thank the board as a whole for its unbelievable, steadfast support of this process. Board members have been very active participants in shaping and attending hearings, inviting their networks, and often traveling many hours to be at the hearings in person. The commitment of this all-volunteer, very busy board to this work has truly been remarkable. And let me also thank at the outset Dr. Kate Shaw and her staff, and to note that while our agenda today does not permit formal remarks, we look forward to formal introductions to her new staff members, Dr. Greg Kinzel, Director of Information Systems and Strategic Analysis, and Ms. Carrie Amon, Director of Economic and Workforce Development, both of whom are with us today at our next meeting. And with that, let me turn the meeting over to Dr. McConnell for her opportunity to welcome all of you.
Thank you, Cindy, and good morning and welcome to St. Joseph's University. Today, as we gather to build the future of higher education in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we stand on a future and a threshold like none other like it, one shaped by rapid technological advancements, shifting economies, and urgent global and climate challenges. And in this ever-changing landscape, higher education and lifelong learning is not just an opportunity or a luxury, it is an imperative. The world this generation of students is inheriting is complex. The problems of the world do not and will not have simple answers. The problems will require critical and creative thinking and the integration of historical perspectives and innovative ideas. This coming decade will require more than just an acquisition of skills that will be rapidly outdated. They will also require deep thinking, resilience, the ability to know, to learn, and to adapt. And this is true for absolutely every field and every profession. In light of these demands, this is why higher education, now more than ever, must grow and evolve. A degree or a certificate is not just a credential, it's a catalyst. It's the foundation upon which we will build solutions for problems we have not yet to imagine. And it is on this backdrop and in this moment that the new State Board of Higher Education was created. With the vision of college presidents, the vision and investment of legislators, and the partnership with business and industry, and the engagement of cities and communities, we can reimagine what's possible so that we can close the credential gap, we can increase access and affordability, and we can attract and retain students to the region to drive positive economic growth and opportunity throughout the Commonwealth. In closing, we are the architects of our future. We are the visionaries in this room, the problem solvers, the change makers who can and must make this happen. We can redefine coordination and collaboration for the greater good. And that begins today with our important work in this session. The future is not a dream. The future is a decision, and it's one that we must make together. So let's invest boldly, let's engage deeply, and let's lead with courage and conviction. Because when we champion higher education, we aren't just building better institutions, we're building a better tomorrow. So thank you, and again, welcome to St. Joseph's University.
Thank you so much, Dr. McConnell. I'm sorry, Kate, were you saying something?
No.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the bulk of this meeting will be devoted to discussion of the major elements of a strategic plan to be adopted by the State Board of Higher Education. And most notably, we are here to get your views on how to strengthen our colleges and universities. As has been the case in prior hearings, we will frame our discussion around information specific to this region. We will also provide a very brief background on the board, and that is what I will do now. And then we'll get into our discussion with Kate leading that portion. So I cannot see the slides, so you'll forgive me if I get off a little bit, and our wonderful staff will furiously text me or step in or something or other if I am, because I'm just going to do this from what I have in terms of notes for the slides. If we go to slide 2, which is on the State Board of Higher Education mission, we will see that the mission is to provide direction, coordination, and support to ensure that institutions of higher education fully meet the economic and workforce needs of the Commonwealth. We want to ensure that all residents of the Commonwealth also have access to affordable world-class post-secondary education. Of course, Those two parts of the mission statement go hand in hand. There are 21 members of the State Board of Higher Education, and they represent stakeholders inclusively, including students, legislators, business leaders, labor leaders, and representatives from the broad range of higher education institutions in the Commonwealth. All right, if we go on to slide 3. Okay, I'm assuming that is up. So today's hearing is just one part of a broader process of gathering feedback throughout the Commonwealth. By what we hope is very careful design, we've invited a broad range of individuals who are invested in higher education to give us feedback in these hearings. And we also have a survey instrument that all Pennsylvanians can access through the QR code on the signs that we have in this room. They can also get to it from our website, and we will share that information again at the end of the presentation. It truly is our goal to obtain feedback from thousands of Pennsylvanians from the beginning of this process, which was a couple of months ago, and over the next few months to inform the development of a new vision for higher education in the Commonwealth. And we are here asking for your help in that effort. So if we go to slide 4, please. And this just lays out the strategic planning steps and the timeline. We're going to be sharing with you the draft strategic planning goals, along with information that is related to each of those goals. And then what we're going to do is, in our conversation, seek your feedback on the goals and on concrete strategies that you suggest we consider in order to meet these important strategic goals. And please understand that our timeline is tight, and that's why we're holding these meetings and going to be getting to work writing, because the new plan is due September 1st of this year. And that means the State Board is supposed to be approving it by September 1st of this year. Okay. So we're going on to slide 5. Thank you very much. All right, so here are the 6 draft goals that we'll be focusing on today. Dr. Shaw is going to be displaying some data on how these goals play out in southeastern Pennsylvania, and then we'll discuss how we can, as a collective, address the challenges to meet these objectives. So here are the 6 goals. The first is increase post-secondary credential attainment, and that would include credentials as well as degrees. Ensure affordable pathways to post-secondary credentials. Oh, I'm going to wait 1 second until we get the goals up. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Goals are not up yet. Sorry about that. All right, so now they are. You'll see goal 1 again, increasing post-secondary credential attainment. 2, in order to do that, of course, increase affordable pathways to post-secondary credentials. The third strategic goal is to support the economic development needs of the Commonwealth, and working with the General Assembly and the Governor's Office in their efforts to do that. Number 4, the other side of the equation, support the workforce development needs of the Commonwealth, which are, of course, based on our developing economy and businesses and industries. The 5th goal is to ensure accountability and efficient use of state funds. And the 6th goal is to strengthen the fiscal health and stability of the higher education sector. And as Dr. Shaw will explain, these goals do derive from the legislation and from what is in the legislation with regard, the enabling legislation of the State Board, and what is in there with regard to what is expected this State Board to be focusing on, and the deliverables for it to be accomplishing. And as Dr. Shaw will also talk about, in Pennsylvania, higher education is facing a number of challenges. Dr. McConnell referred to this also. We all know this. We're not unique. This is true across the country. But we are looking at this as actually an unprecedented opportunity to turn these challenges into opportunities. Our colleges and universities do remarkable work in serving our students and our communities already. So we look at this as a chance to build on that great foundation and really make our Commonwealth top level in terms of higher education attainment and workforce and economic development. So slide 6 is up, I believe. And just briefly, the process for the rest of the hearing is to walk through each goal within the context of statewide and regional information that Dr. Shaw will go through. And again, as I said, seek your suggestions for strategies with regard to each. So with that, I am going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Shaw, who will start by leading us through some more detailed information on higher education in the Commonwealth and to begin our discussion.
Thank you, Cindy. And again, welcome everybody. I noticed there's a lot of people joining virtually, which was a little annoying because we kept getting those beeps, but it's so exciting for us that there's so much participation in this hearing. I'm Kate Shaw, I'm the Executive Director of the State Board of Higher Education, which really was created to chart a new course for higher education and to bring key stakeholders together to work together to meet those goals. So a little bit about this meeting. When we first announced that we were going to have public hearings, people said to me, well, who's going to be on the expert panel? Like, the audience is the expert. We don't feel the need to have a bunch of people up here telling us what we already know about the challenges that face higher education in Pennsylvania and really across the country. What we really want to do is to hear from you about how we're going to address those challenges and how we're going to take advantage of this uniquely important point in time, as President McConnell spoke of. How will we chart our own course? How will we make sure that higher education is the engine for economic prosperity that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania needs? That is the purpose of these hearings. We need the best thinking in the Commonwealth to inform the thinking of the board so that when the strategic plan is drafted and ultimately adopted, it represents all of our best thinking. So while there are many people in here from the higher education sector, please understand we are seeking broad input, not just from higher education leaders, although obviously they're critically important, but from students, from K-12 sector, from business, industry, labor. We really want everybody's perspective because truly everybody has a stake in higher education in Pennsylvania. There is not a state in the union that is successful and prosperous that is not bolstered by a strong higher education sector. So that is our charge. I think this is a really exciting point in time, and I'm really interested in your feedback. So please understand, I really want you to weigh in. A couple of sort of rules of the game. People may identify challenges. I identify challenges. But the goal here is to think about how to solve the challenges. So the goal is not to just have a conversation about what ails us, but also how are we going to fix these problems? And so as you speak, I'm going to ask you if you have a problem that you want to sort of talk about, that's great, but I'm always going to ask you, okay, how are we going to solve that problem? So that's what we're looking for in this process. So I'm going to start walking through these goals. This is the first draft strategic plan goal, increasing post-secondary credential attainment. And the rationale is pretty simple. We need to equip more people with post-secondary credentials. And by that, I do not mean simply degrees, although they're critically important, but also shorter-term credentials that are oftentimes a foothold into a great career and a well-paying job. So it's important that we think about this more broadly than college degrees, because what we see is a hope to create a set of stackable credentials that help people obtain higher education throughout their lifetime. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information to help contextualize our conversation. The first thing I want to show you is this map that shows us that on average, Pennsylvania's attainment rate, college attainment rate, is about average in the nation. But one of the things we see is pretty dramatic differences in the level of college attainment. We do see that Southeastern Pennsylvania has a higher than average rate of attainment, which is great. But when we're thinking about the entire state, one of the things that we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about raising attainment rates is what's going on in these other parts of the state where the attainment is low, and how do we fix that? What are the root causes there, and how do we think about solutions to them? This is another critically important piece of information for us. We know that we're seeing a little bit of rebounding in terms of college enrollment after COVID, but these numbers are over the last 10 years, and everybody needs to see this and understand that our college enrollment rates have dropped dramatically, and they have dropped across all sectors. Most dramatically, what you see here is community colleges and PASHE, although the data that we have about community colleges doesn't capture shorter term credentials. So this number might be a little bit inflated, but we see across all of our sectors, our state relateds on main campuses, the drop is like the most modest. But if you look at those branch campuses, you see an over 20% drop. So we're seeing this across the Commonwealth. We see this across the nation as well in most states. One of the things that's going to contribute to and exacerbate this problem is these demographic trends. Everybody keeps talking about the enrollment cliff. What's the enrollment cliff or the graduation cliff? We are projecting a pretty significant drop in public high school graduates in Pennsylvania by 2037. So there will be fewer high school graduates to enroll in higher education. Importantly, though, we're also seeing a drop in the adult population. And we're going to talk a little bit about this later. The adult population is critically important to meeting the needs of the Commonwealth and thinking about how to address the needs of adults to allow them to go back to college and get a credential or degree. We also see that we've got a projected decline from 2020 to 2040. And only there's over 1 million Pennsylvanians that we would consider adults that have some college but no degree. So that's a critically important population. Another thing I wanted to show you is a map courtesy of PASHE that helps us understand in southeastern Pennsylvania where our higher education institutions are. And when we're in different ranges, portions of the state, I can assure you the map does not look like this. This is a region that is rich in higher education institutions. We see in particular a concentration of institutions right around Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. We see a little bit fewer sort of as you get into the western part of this region, but we have quite a rich array of higher education institutions, and that's a foundation for us to build on. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to open it up to you. I gave you a little bit of information about our college attainment levels, some of the challenges that are facing us. So the question for this audience is, first of all, is there anything you think we need to know about the southeastern part of the Commonwealth in particular as we talk about strategies? But what strategies would you suggest we use to meet this particular goal? And so my colleague Lubna is going to put you on mic.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ann Prisco. I represent Hope University, which proudly serves Northeast Philadelphia and the Bucks County region. We are a values-based, academically excellent, career-focused school. What that means is we'll do everything from a certificate, short-term certificate, to master's and doctoral degrees. A good example of how do we encourage credential attainment is hospitals and senior care facilities came and asked us to start a certified nursing assistant program. It's a short-term 6-week certificate, which is low cost and gets them into the hospitals and the senior care facilities. And then we build the pathway so that they have multiple options to pursue a radiology degree, a nursing degree, a 2-year nursing, a 4-year nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, the hospitals told us they need more family nurse practitioners. So we developed more nurse practitioner programs. So I think what we'll find is the higher ed community is listening to, and we need to have more conversations with the employers to say, what do you need? And we'll do it. We're a nimble group of higher ed institutions that are willing to serve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. And I think one of the things you're pointing out is something that I hope is obvious to everyone, which is that our higher education institutions are remarkable and they partner all the time. The challenge for the Commonwealth is how do you scale that? How do you make sure that's happening? How do you set the table to ensure that the excellent work that you're doing is something that can be replicated in other places? And so thank you for that example. Other comments? I know you all have comments.
Good morning. Chris Dillms, the president at Newman University in Aston, Pennsylvania. To sort of jump off from Ann's comments, at Newman, I think one of the things that we are very proud of is the education of first generation students and students who are also Pell eligible, almost 50% of our population. So as you look at attainment, it's also about access and the ability of individuals to feel like they can access higher education. So it's important, I think, the stakeholders are about in higher education is not just about the programs we're providing and the need at the employer level, but how do you convince young people that they can afford this, that they can have an access to this? And so we work very hard at Newman to make sure we have scholarship opportunities as part of my responsibility, and many the independent colleges as well as the state funded institutions. Presidents are out there funding scholarship opportunities for students. And our students are all focused on careers. Except, in fact, about 90% of our students say to us immediately following graduation, I found the job, I found the career I want, I'm on the path. And I think those are students, 60% of whom are first generation and are saying to us, you have helped us create that path. And I think we have to not just think about what the needs are on the other side of education, but how do we find ways to help those young people see a pathway into higher education and credentialing programs?
So what would your strategy be for scaling some kind of approach that would help replicate what's happening?
I think one thing is to partner with businesses and companies. One of the things that we do a lot is to talk to young people about where do they see careers and jobs. As they sit in their homes, they don't know what a radiologist does. They don't always know what a nurse practitioner does. They don't know what a cybersecurity expert actually does. In order for us to have them understand that, we get in front of them early on and talk to high school students, recruit them. Here's the pathway to careers. Here's your opportunity. And so corporations and companies have to help us with that. And higher education is a way for us to engage with higher ed, with the companies and organizations that ultimately want to hire these students and have them as great employees in the future. But there's a disconnect between the understanding of what higher education and education means and how to get there for a lot of young people.
Right.
And we have to find a way to make that gap much, much smaller.
Thank you. We had a high school counselor at our Penn State hearing who was really eloquent about exactly what you're talking about. How do you help people understand the connection between higher education and what a career might look like, et cetera? So I appreciate that. And I think there's like an information gap right now that we have my colleague Greg Kinzel, who's our data person, he's going to solve that in like about a month or so. But that is a thing, and there are some states that do a particularly good job at sort of showing what those connections are that we can learn from that. There was someone.
Yeah, just to be in the solution business, I'm Joel Sensor from Harlem Lacrosse. I would say I have lucky that I have a national perspective. We're in programs in Philly and Baltimore and New York and LA, in Boston, and we send about 250 kids a year to college. In Pennsylvania, we sent almost every single one of our seniors out of state because there's not a state opportunity program that exists in all of our other regions. And I would just say the solution is oftentimes these state opportunity programs. You look at New York, HEOP, you look at Maryland, Guaranteed Access Grant, you look at California, A through G. I think most Pell eligible, so 90% of our students are Pell eligible, 80% have a negative 1500 SAI. I think it shows with if they get the funding, if they get the programmatic support, they will persist and go through higher education. So, I mean, it's there. Act 101 is like that could be HEOP light, right? I think there is opportunities in the state to find both programmatic support and funding support to make it work for Pell eligible students, but the state's got to put money to it and there's got to be a will to get there. So that's my follow up to that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie with Chester County Futures. We're a post-secondary success program in Chester County. And on the comments of the other two gentlemen here, that's exactly what we have found successful. We're in 4 schools, high schools, 9th through 12th. We start at 9th grade, kind of talking about career development and if college, 98% of our students go to college. But it's 4 years of looking at what do you want to do after high school, and then the cost. That is the biggest thing, that they come in thinking they can't go to college because of the cost, and we help them through the process.
Mhm.
So we found that very successful.
So your suggestion might be, how do we figure out how to scale that kind of intensive counseling in high school? I'm looking at Secretary Carrie Rowe, who is going to be able to solve that problem immediately. But
Yeah.
that connection between what's happening in high school and maybe even in middle school, and how you get people thinking about college, how college might benefit them, how they're going to navigate cost.
Right,
That's
but
what
we found the schools and the counselors, they want to do that, and some schools are doing it really well, helping at the high school level.
Right.
But some schools are really, they have a lot on their plate, the counselors. So
sure.
we're looking to work with the counseling department to really kind of bridge that gap where the experimental learning, taking them out into our community partners. We were just at Globus Medical, so they could be hands-on and seeing a company. So trips like that, it kind of opens their eyes to see what's available.
Thank you for that example. Couple more comments. We have 6 goals to get through, but this is great conversation.
I'm glad to be amongst the couple comments that are left. My name is Farah Jimenez. I'm the president CEO of the Philadelphia Education Fund. Good to see you, Kate.
Nice to see you.
So my thought was, there's a lot of work being done in the Southeast region that's directed one-on-one with students in terms of advising services, and obviously scaling that would be terrific. One of the programs that we also do is called the Philadelphia Post-Secondary Success Program, and its focus is on helping our schools identify what their needs are in order to foment the college going culture that will sustain not just the students who are receiving direct services, but also create within that school community the idea that all students have the potential to attend a post-secondary program, and that they're orienting themselves to support that ambition for young people. And so a lot of that work is more about working with school leadership teams and changing the environment within which students dwell. And we all know that that's important because we see that in college prep oriented or special admission schools that we see in Philadelphia, where it's very clear every student walks in 9th grade knowing they are being geared up to graduate and go on to continue their education. But many of our comprehensive high schools in Philadelphia, that is not the message our students get. But they also have lots of partners working in those buildings, and everybody's just doing their own thing. But if you can make that work more cohesively as a team, you can also support students that may not themselves be engaged in one-on-one advising. So I would say anything that we can do to help our schools develop and implement college-going culture and sustain those would help with post-secondary credential attainment.
Thank you so much. I love this emphasis on the connection between K-12 and higher ed.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Williams. I'm a senior measurement scientist at ETS. And one of the populations that I work with that has a very low post-secondary credential attainment rate is with the correctional population. So as a solution, I would love to see strengthening of the partnerships between the higher education institutions in southeastern Pennsylvania. There are so many opportunities to work with those populations, listen to their unique needs and barriers, and even just focusing on that group, putting more resources into that group, I think you could see a dramatic increase in the educational attainment rate, higher educational attainment rate, just by even working with them. Just including them as part of the conversation and the strategy would be a really dramatic way to help.
Thank you for that comment. Is there time for one more? There's so many people. This is great.
Hi, I'm Steve Evans with Graduate Philadelphia, and we have about 5,000 adults who can't go to college because they have an outstanding back balance. And we can help one at a time, but what we would love to see is more a collaborative regional approach that could be a real solution. And maybe there are resources available that if an institution commits to reducing 50% of their back balance, they could apply for a grant for the other 50 and get back in. So it gives the institutions an incentive to help solve the problem, but it also is a cash flow and puts students in seats. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I think finding those people who are almost there and figuring out what the barriers are and reducing those barriers is critically important, and speaks also to the needs of the adult population as well. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to have to go on to another goal. However, there's more opportunity to give us feedback either through the survey. You got a little QR code when you walked in the door. And we're also going to be trying to do some smaller group meetings to continue to get your feedback. But I'm going to go on to goal 2, which is related to goal 1, right? Ensuring affordable pathways to post-secondary credentials. And when we say affordable, we talk about this broadly. Consideration of debt levels, debt to expected earnings ratio, et cetera, time to credential, tuition and fees, true cost of attendance. There is, a whole field of incredibly talented people who do nothing but think about how to deal with affordability. And we need to, all that we hear all the time, if you walk down the street and you talk to people, what is the biggest barrier to going to college? It is almost always affordability. And that's not just in Pennsylvania, but we are particularly challenged in Pennsylvania. We are, last time people ranked states on affordability, we were 49th. The average student who graduates from college graduates with $40,000 in debt. These are not great numbers. I remember showing these numbers to the governor a couple of years ago, and he was, appropriately appalled that we're so expensive in Pennsylvania. And that's not the fault of any one entity, but that's like part of the higher ed ecosystem that we have to begin to think about and start to figure out how to solve. As I said before, we've got 1.1 million folks that have some college and no degree. We don't know exactly why they didn't finish. Oftentimes, it's because of either they start to get afraid of how much debt they're accumulating, or they can no longer, or they max out their Pell Grants and state grants, lots of different reasons, but oftentimes that it has to do with affordability. A really important statistic that I didn't know a couple years ago was that not only are we having the overall number of high school graduates drop, the percentage of high school graduates that elect to go to college is also dropping. So we have a drop in the overall number and the percentage that are electing to go to college shortly after high school. That's really an alarming statistic. And nationally, we know that 38% of high school graduates who haven't gone on to get a degree or credential say that cost and debt contributed significantly. So there's lots of different numbers I could put up in front of you. We could go back and forth about what the specifics are and whether this percentage point is 2 points higher or 2 points lower. It's pretty clear we have an affordability problem in Pennsylvania that is contributing to lots of other problems that are addressed in the goals that the board adopted. So rather than put a ton of information in front of you, I just gave those little pieces to you. Is there a particular issue in affordability regarding affordability in the southeastern region of the Commonwealth? Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes it's not a regional issue. And also, again, what strategies should we use to meet this goal? Understanding that we have policies in place already that are designed to do things like shorten the time to degree, dual credit programs, right? Or AP programs. So there are things that we can do and policies that are already in place that are really designed to help figure out how to get students through more affordably and for a shorter time to degree so that they can enter the workforce, a little bit earlier. But having said that, obviously we have a big state grant program, FIA, that FIA administers, et cetera. But I'd like to open this up. I bet you have a lot of ideas about how to make college more affordable, remembering that we're really looking for sort of what are some solutions that we can scale? What can the state do? What can the State Board of Higher Education recommend that would begin to address college affordability in the Commonwealth? Hold on, I'm gonna ask this person to, oh no, she's, okay.
I was just going to do.
No, that's fine. Okay, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Ridyard. I'm Director of Partnerships at Philadelphia Education Fund. Can you hear me? Okay. Is it okay if I don't stand up? That makes me nervous. Okay. I think that in Philadelphia, what we see is students and families, when they're reviewing their financial aid award, sometimes they try to get creative around the cost of housing. So thinking about, a way to make first time fall college matriculation affordable is maybe I'll commute. So I'm curious about the like the geography around PASHE schools in Philadelphia and kind of what that model could be, knowing that we have Temple, we have CCP, but not, the closest PASHE is Westchester. So just thinking about that, I'm curious about the kind of the need for housing and housing insecurity that students face. So I'm thinking about colleges that offer housing over breaks, and I'm thinking about students' interest in shorter time to degree, as we see in a lot of the credentialing programs that are offered. So curious about year-round school models, curious about, just degree offerings that really speak to students and adults being career ready, but also on a more accelerated timeline. I think that there are, just some considerations that students and families are thinking about when it comes to their college choice that are really centered in affordability. I think if you're not able to be admitted to a selective college that meets full need, and we're thinking about mid-range students who have great GPAs but perhaps not access to more rigorous coursework, what are the affordable options for them where they're not going to be gapped based on just the set rate for tuition across PASHE schools and including the kind of rising cost of housing?
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And Livna, we have to remember that there's many people online that I also have to make sure have a chance to speak. So let's call on a few more people here, and then we can make sure that our online colleagues get a chance to speak as well.
I'll sit down too. Jason Hart's Pennsylvania College of Art and Design. Real quick, we had great success with the near completer grant from a couple years ago. We were disappointed that it was just a one and done kind of thing. Is there any talk around the state government of reviving that?
Is that your suggestion? Your suggested
Yeah,
strategy would be to revive that?
You revive that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I think we graduated about 20 students from, not all of them started as PCAD students. So we had really good success. That would be a
Can
strategy.
you just briefly describe what that grant program was for folks who might not know?
Students who had, maybe they were within a certain credit amount to graduation, but they couldn't complete for largely financial reasons. So the state allocated some money that we could pay for childcare, travel, laptops to get them across the finish line.
Thank you. And you're speaking, I think, to the need to consider the cost of college for a whole human being, not just the cost to attend college, but the cost to get childcare or transportation or other barriers that could emerge. And that, we have a whole field of collegiate basic needs that are trying to do that, and multiple grant programs in Pennsylvania that are trying to address some of those issues. But probably we don't have enough resources devoted to them to meet the full need of every student. So I appreciate that.
We'll take one more question in the room and then switch to anyone who's online. So if you are online, we appreciate your patience.
Yeah, Kate, just to emphasize, the FIA grant is so important, and expansion of that is so, I think, an important piece of the affordability piece for students in the state and the Commonwealth. Very important. I've served in 4 different states as a college administrator. So this is I would say Pennsylvania has got so many things going for it in terms of its breadth of higher education options. I would say one comment that was made earlier, I served in New York State, the HEOP program, which is an incredibly beneficial program, similar to making sure that the students who have the least amount in the state of New York have an opportunity for access to higher education. It's an incredible grant. It's been in place a long time. I would encourage the state board to look at other states that do these things at this level and the success they've had over a course of many years. And HEOP, I think, is one example of that and provides a platform for maybe considering an option moving forward.
Great. And that's absolutely, I imagine some of the strategies and recommendations are going to be focused on how do we learn from the best that other states have to offer, because many states have tackled this affordability problem in a much more sort of creative way than we have so far. Are we turning to?
Yeah, let's turn to online, and then we do have at least one more question.
Okay.
Comment in the room.
Okay, thanks so much, online attendees. We are going to turn to Miss Williams, and apologies in advance if I mispronounce your name. I'm going to unmute. You should be unmuted, Miss Williams, and for others who wish to speak, you can indicate so by raising your hand online. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *5. Thank you. Ms. Williams, if you could tell us your affiliation.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Deisha Williams. I'm Dean of the College of Education and Social Work at Westchester University. And I'm curious about, is there data available to show the disaggregation of that $40,000? Because I want to know where the pain points are. Because if you're looking at PASHE affiliated private versus the housing that's causing the pain point, so in order to determine how we can best address it, I think we need to do some dive, if it's available, of where those pain points are actually coming in that $40,000 debt ratio.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. That's a good strategy for trying to identify concrete ways to move forward. We need additional data. There are additional data available. We just didn't want to dominate. We wanted to make sure people had an opportunity to speak, but those are some of the things that we'll certainly put in front of the board as they consider what they want to adopt in the strategic plan.
Mr. Brooks, you're up next. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Phil Brooks. I work with Graduate Philadelphia. I guess one of my, not solutions, but one of my thoughts around this really focuses on employers and their need for just talent development. I'm sure there's some data out there, maybe not a bunch of data out there, but I'm sure there's some data out there about programs that are in concert with employers or maybe higher education institutions, where they work with the employers to support the student or the employee or the worker with affordable opportunities, especially because this is a big deal for employers. I'm just throwing the idea out there. The data, I'm sure, is probably somewhere harder to get to, I think, than we can imagine, but still, in my conversation with employers just over the past couple of years, that kind of thought has been floated around. I just wanted to make that statement, just some type of data or connection with employers in higher education institutions. I know it's happening, but more concrete examples of how this can be beneficial to the community would be amazing.
So what you're asking, what your strategy would be is to obtain data that would show the value of credentials. Is that what you're talking about? Like the value of a credential in the workplace?
The value of a credential in the workplace, yes, but also employers supporting the kind of direct the direct ability for an individual to afford college. I don't think it's, yes, I will stop there.
Okay, and that's going to be a topic we'll come back to when we get to one of the next goals, that connection between employers and higher ed.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. One more online comment right now from Miss Jishnat, and apologies again if I've mispronounced your name. You should be able to unmute. Thank you so much. Nancy, if you can hear us, you are unmuted on our end.
I think we'll need to maybe circle back to her.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Nancy. We'll try to come back to you. Thank you.
Okay. One more comment from the room, Lubna?
Yes.
Thank you, Lubna. My name is Tom Foley. I'm the president of the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Pennsylvania. Maybe more importantly, I'm a recovering college president of an institution where 60% of our students were first generation, 50% of our students were Pell. And I want everybody to understand affordability is such an issue for all of us. It is especially an issue for these independent nonprofit schools. 46% of all FIA kids in Pennsylvania go to independent nonprofit schools. 47% of all the Pell kids in Pennsylvania go to these 80 plus institutions. 40 of these 80 schools have more than 30% of their students are FIA recipient kids. 19 of those schools, it is more than 40% of them, and 8 of those schools, it is more than 50%. So this is an incredibly important issue for us, and I have 2 suggestions.
Thank you.
One is that there really be a focus on graduating on time. I looked at the data on student debt between publicly funded institution graduates and graduates of independent nonprofit schools. In the last 10 years, the independent nonprofit schools' average debt was actually lower, not by much, but it was lower than the average student debt for kids from publicly funded schools. And when I look at what the reason was for that, in a lot of cases, it's because kids are not graduating on time. And one of the reasons they do graduate on time from the independent nonprofit schools is so many of them were mission focused at the beginning, and a focus on wraparound services. What you do with Maslow and programs like that is critical if you're going to help these kids to graduate on time, because there's no Pell and there's no FIA in the 5th and 6th year that it's taking these kids. So a real focus on getting kids through on time will decrease debt. It is absurd that the average debt for a kid from a publicly funded institutions, which receive 1.5 billion in institutional funds from the Commonwealth every year, should be higher than the average debt from kids from the independent nonprofits who receive less than 10% of that state budget. My second suggestion is that there be some focus of collaboration on costs. These independent nonprofits in Pennsylvania have a long history. Their average age is 139 years, that they have been embedded in 58 different communities in Pennsylvania. They work together in 38 different program areas. And I should have brought the little booklet that every one of them has. So nobody buys software except through the contract that we negotiate. Cybersecurity, a school like the one I was president of cannot afford a cybersecurity expert. We can barely afford the IT that we needed, but we can be part of a collaborative entity with 35 other schools where we pay $8,000 a year and we get really good advice on what to do. We even have a multi-employer retirement plan so that our small schools can earn more on the dollars they have, but also share the workload that they really don't have the task force to do. There's 38 different programs like that. We calculate their savings every year for our members so that they know what the value of those programs is. So some way to focus on more collaboration on those kinds of costs that can easily be shared, and a real focus, much more of the Maslow type initiatives that have begun at PDE, where you can, as many of our schools do, really focus. We took the little bit of money that we would get from the state through the IAG grant. It's an institutional assistance grant. That was $300,000 a year for Little Mount Aloysius College. Well, that paid for 3 people full-time. Their job was to focus on the first gen kids to make sure they got through in time. And we could do that all over the Commonwealth. I think that would make a big difference on debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Great examples to think about at a scalable level. Appreciate that.
Ms. Dishnot, if you can unmute yourself, we would love to hear your affiliation and your suggestion.
Okay, I'm so sorry that we cannot hear from her. We can follow up with her later and get her comments. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next goal. I appreciate all of these comments, really helpful to us. And also it's really interesting because we are getting slightly different emphases in the different regions that we go to. So we're not at a point where we're hearing exactly the same thing from every region. So the richness of this conversation is really contributing to, I know it will contribute to the thinking of the board. Okay, now we're going to turn to economic development. So I want to make a distinction between how we're defining economic development and workforce development because they're related, but we see them as different. So the economic development goal that the board has adopted is really focused on the future of the economy in Pennsylvania. In other words, how do we, as a higher education sector, increase the talent pool in the Commonwealth, increase the amount of innovation that comes from our colleges and universities so that this is an attractive place for good paying jobs to be, and so that people who are in the Commonwealth have the credentials and the talent that they need to actually take advantage of emerging economies. The Department of Community and Economic Development under Governor Shapiro issued a 10-year strategic plan that identifies very clearly the important role of higher education in the economic development future in the plan of the governor and of the department. And they identify 3 strategies: building the foundation for a strong, effective, and efficient system of higher ed, reinvesting in higher education responsibly and effectively, and making college more affordable for all Pennsylvanians. So I think it's really a great opportunity for us to acknowledge and take advantage of the fact that in this administration, there's a clear through line between the economic well-being of the Commonwealth and the strength of our higher education institutions. And it's our job to sort of meet that challenge. There's a few other things from their strategic plan that I think are also important that I have listed up here: innovation, building vibrant and resilient regions, which I think you can see the governor really bearing down on as he goes across the Commonwealth and continues to highlight small communities. That's also directly related to higher education in those communities and the ability to make sure that people have the credentials they need to stay in the communities that they want to stay in and raise their families. One of the things we know from other states and from rankings that exist about economic development and creating a favorable environment for new employers is that states that do this well have an overall high level of attainment in post-secondary education. And again, I'm going to emphasize that doesn't necessarily mean 2 or 4 year degrees. It also means short-term credentials. The skills and the talent that exist in the state are aligned not just to today's economy, but tomorrow's economy as well. A higher education ecosystem that is responsive and can meet the needs of potential employers or new employers and the employers need to understand that our higher education institutions can do that. Incentives for institutions and for businesses to innovate, to create new employers or new economic opportunities, and a really strong alignment between the post-secondary sector and those economic development efforts. So we know from other states, this is sort of the table we need to set if we want to knit together what we do with the long-term economic prosperity of the Commonwealth. So it's helpful to know that because it's part of what the board will be thinking about as we're thinking about these strategies, and part of what I want you to be thinking about when I ask you this question. What strategies do you think would be most helpful in ensuring that higher education meets this goal to support the economic development needs of the Commonwealth? And are there particular things about Southeastern Pennsylvania that you want to put on the table? Understanding that the economy in Southeastern Pennsylvania is notably different than the rest of the state. And one of the things the board has acknowledged is that as we think about a strategic plan for higher ed, there may be overarching goals that are relevant across the state, but the individual strategies that are adopted might be region specific. And this might be a situation in which that's the case. So I will open this up to questions first on the floor, and then we'll turn to people online. We got you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Mock. I'm with Lehigh University.
Thanks for
I think
coming.
this is, I'm sorry?
That was a long drive for you, so I appreciate that you're here.
I actually don't live too far away.
You should have taken the credit.
25-minute drive from here, actually. I live in Montgomery County. But last year, we actually worked with DCED on a innovation and entrepreneurship symposium where we invited higher education, industry, and also government folks to our university to discuss this very topic, actually. And one of the main takeaways that I thought was extremely beneficial for the conversation was how higher education institutions would really work to support their faculty and students in regards to their endeavors in regards to entrepreneurship, innovation, and doing their own thing and creating things, if they really invest and support those students, it really does help them get jobs, higher earning jobs, working with industry as well, and building strong relationships with folks in industry and the business side of things. I think those relationships and also that support for the faculty and also the students will help generate that economic growth. And I think that's it's something that we lack as opposed to other states that we found out, where we could be better and making sure that we're training our brightest minds at our higher education institutions, but also keeping them in Pennsylvania as opposed to going to Ohio, as opposed to going to New York or New Jersey. So I think that that's something that really stuck out to me from our event. But I'd say the collaboration between us, industry and government is going to be key in this point.
Thank you for that suggestion. And I know that it's a critically important issue for many legislators and many folks in the Commonwealth. How do we keep the talent in Pennsylvania? How do we grow our own? And then if people want to come to college in Pennsylvania from out of state, how do we keep them here? And so that's a critical element of the talent development. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name is Dana Riker Jackson. I own a consulting business called Riker Opportunity Institute that is all about developing the talent for companies and organizations. I've been doing it for 28 years. And it's always been my goal to bring what I do for corporations to young people, because I feel like the social emotional intelligence, the leadership skills that many of us that are older in this room may have gotten around the dining room table is not happening with young people, especially those that are in challenged economic environments, which then prevent them from being able to pursue college. So I created a program called UROC Leadership Ready to Work program that I started as a gap year program and then have also delivered it to high school seniors. And so far I've graduated 24 students, all of which before the program did not have college on their radar. After the program, most of them have pursued college, and not only pursued college, but have been able to stay in college, which I think we also have to address the mental health issues that are going on with our young people that prevent them from being able to pursue higher education as well. And so my program helps to develop the mental and emotional capacity to handle the rigors of higher ed, as well as the, as you put in this paragraph, the essential or soft skills that are needed in order to be successful, not only in college, but also at work. So I would love to be able to partner with more organizations to be able to do even a train the trainer to bring, because the curriculum has proven to produce the results that are going to set these young people up for success and give them the skills that employers are looking for. So I would love an opportunity to figure out how to partner with people to be able to provide this program. And then the other example of that, Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health, I'd like to get more companies that are investing in, I've thought about a adopt a student kind of program where companies maybe get incentives from the state in some way, shape, or form to create these onboarding programs within their companies that helps to attract students, get them interested in wanting to get higher education, and then also providing jobs in the interim, as well as a way to afford their higher education. And Devereaux Behavioral Health has created a program called Ascend. Not only does everything I just mentioned, but they also will pay for the degree for the entry-level person in order to fulfill a job that they might need within their company.
Thank you. So we have examples of that kind of partnership between employers and higher education institutions actually peppered all over the state. The question for us as a board that's supposed to be looking at the whole ecosystem is what are the incentives, what are the conditions under which those kinds of partnerships can be scaled? And that's really the challenge that we're facing. It's not that there's a dearth of good examples. It's how do you take those examples and figure out how to support them? What's the policy environment? And what is the role of the state board in bringing relevant folks together to figure out what are the barriers? Why aren't there more of those programs? Why aren't there more partnerships? And how do we address them? So I appreciate your
Well, I
comments.
can tell you, I've spoken to a lot of people and I get resistance to those partnerships.
Yep,
So
I'm sure we will follow up with you on that. I would love to hear more about that.
Thanks. Good morning, Patrick Jones, Bucks County Community College. As a direct follow-on, one thing that could help in this place legislatively would be tax incentives for employers to hire interns.
Okay, that's a very concrete strategy.
Yeah, there used to be a program called SLIP, State Local Internship Program through CareerLink and employers, but could get money to hire interns. They could top off. There was a variety of things. That money went away during COVID. I wouldn't bring it back exactly as it was because it was a fixed sum and it was easy for the legislature to shut it down. As opposed to if you want to keep these students in Pennsylvania, they're getting internships locally while they're in college. And in a lot of places, Bucks County is one of them. We have a lot of small employers who really can't afford to just take it on their own.
Right.
So legislation incentivize for internships.
I appreciate that. And I know it's a heavy lift for businesses, not just in terms of money, but also how to support those interns, how to make sure that those interns have a rich experience, all those things. I think there's work for us to do in partnership with employers. Yes.
So just building on the comment from down front, one of the areas that I work in that I'm very passionate about is what you called core skills, soft skills, transferable skills, whatever term you want to use. And a big reason for that is because I also feel like they are so critical for success in the workforce in the future. When we talk about preparing students for the future, oftentimes we're talking about preparing students for jobs that don't exist yet. So, the technical skills are obviously important. They're great, but technology evolves so quickly that those skills have such a half-life where about these other skills like persistence and leadership and collaboration, creativity, all that, those things endure and they travel well. That's why they're also called transferable skills. So I think the solution that I would get at would be to take a step back and think about building a framework for Pennsylvania around exactly what skills we think are important, informed by local workforce needs, maybe regional needs. I know the State Department of Education developed a career ready skills continuum a while back for pre-K-12. So maybe expanding on that for post-secondary education and lifelong learning to support that. I think would be a great way to just make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of when we talk about these skills, what do we actually mean? And then that can inform assessment, it can inform training for these skills. And again, just making sure it's informed by employers, the kind of skills that they're looking for to support the local workforce needs.
Another example of a suggestion really focused on breaking down whatever barriers exist between these two sectors and really having honest conversations about where the disconnect lies and how to overcome it.
So Kate, I know we have 3 more comments that I have noted in the room. I want to get to people whose hands I saw, and then I don't know what we're doing with online and timing, but.
Okay.
I think it's the corporate sector, the chamber, business leaders, very important, I think, for them to look downstream and help partner with higher education on the idea that we're building the economy and the economic future of Pennsylvania together. And I think from internship experiences and allowing students to have the opportunity to go and actually experience a job, experiential learning, so important, especially for first generation students and for students who don't always understand, what's that experience going to look like. So really important, I think, in building the economic future is that the corporate and business community and higher education are looking at it together. And I would make one other comment. I think we could be an even stronger import of students outside the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I believe if corporations worked more closely with us. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has the incredible network of higher education that is the envy of many states and many families around the country. We did a better job of sort of forecasting and thinking about what the future looks like and attracting those individuals from other states. I think that would be a win-win for the Commonwealth.
Appreciate that. That's a good strategy.
This is Tom Foley again. 3 suggestions. 1, catalog them. 2, keep them here. And 3, defend research. First, catalog these examples of integration between nonprofit higher ed sectors and the for-profit sector. There are hundreds of them. Little tiny Mount Aloysius, we had 7 different partnerships with local corporate entities. And I think if they're cataloged, it will give people other ideas for how they can expand in their own area. People would be shocked to know the level of cooperation there is between the higher ed sector and the for-profit sector in this state. Secondly, keep them here. Chris just mentioned, Pennsylvania is the 2nd best state in the country, 34 years of data at recruiting out-of-state students to come here for university. At our piece, we're about half of all the 4-year graduates in Pennsylvania. 44,000 of those students stay here every year and take jobs in this state, but 30,000 of them leave and go back to where they were from or go somewhere else. We need to do a better job of keeping students once we get them here. And that's 34 years of data.
But how? What's
One
your
of them is
strategy?
categorize all the programs that exist now, which will give people ideas to create even more. My nephew was just here, who's a student at St. Joe's. His internship is with an accounting firm, and that was last summer. Timmy's still working for them. He built that relationship because there was a for-profit relationship that St. Joe's set up as a nonprofit institution.
So catalog is your
Catalog
suggestion.
them.
Okay, thank you.
Third comment, defend research. Pennsylvania is one of the top 5 research states in the country, any way that you want to measure it. These cuts that may take place for the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation, they don't just affect our 3 giant state-related schools. We're so lucky in Pennsylvania. We have world-class institutions in the independent nonprofit sector and in the public sector. And that is why we are one of the top 5 states in the country at research. I just did an op-ed piece on the connection of research to jobs, to healthcare, to national defense, and a litany of other areas with links in each area. And the Fed right here in Philadelphia, the VP at the Fed, Deborah Diamond, Dr. Deborah Diamond, she's created something called the Reliance Index, where she looks at how much a region depends on research, particularly in eds and meds. Pennsylvania has 3 national hotspots, one of them right here in Philadelphia, one in Pittsburgh, and one in State College. We need to defend that and work hard. And I know people want to stay away from all the national noise, and it's much more than noise on higher education, but this is an issue that is not partisan, that matters for jobs, it matters for healthcare, it matters for national defense. And we need to be out there as a state fighting for research. Just of our 80 schools, 35 of them have research entities just from those 2 science things. Big money is at our state-related schools and a couple of schools, but it affects all of those other industries, and we need to focus on that.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Amanda Hill from Pierce College in Philadelphia. We serve adults and we bring in expertise, I think, that is, not necessarily prevalent in a lot of other places. I have two suggestions. The first is relevant to the Southeast region particularly. When we looked at SEPTA funding, the economic driver of the region, it's a kind of thing. It's not tied into higher ed, but it can really affect higher ed and the economic development of the region.
So fully fund SEPTA.
Fully fund SEPTA. Just if any influence anybody has, somebody throw it out there, please. That'd be great.
Noted.
The other thing I wanted to mention was really about the incentivizing employers to invest in training, specifically from the adult perspective. If we can find ways to get call center folks into training programs, short-term training programs that companies pay for, that's going to up our credential attainment rate, and it's going to be paid for by the by the employer. And we already have a system. The WEDNET system's already set up. It's not really utilized very well. We could expand that, make it more friendly for people to get involved with it. that there are systems in place that we could really look at. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. So many good suggestions on this front. Allie, are there any folks online?
There are indeed. Miss Dishnot, your mic has been enabled. So you can, if you can just click the microphone at the top of your navigation bar, you'll unmute yourself and should be able to speak. And after that, we'll get to Miss Porter.
I think we'll just have to move on. I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
All right. So sorry, Ms. Dishnot. We will absolutely follow up with you directly. So now we're going to turn to Miss Isabel Porter. I am enabling your microphone, so you should be able to unmute yourself, and please let us know your affiliation.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Dr. Isabel Porter. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Dean of Health Sciences at Montgomery County Community College. And forgive me, I'm learning a lot of this as we go along. This has been really helpful so far. And one of the thoughts that came to my head as we're speaking is you asked what the board could do to kind of help to support some of these initiatives or some of these thoughts. And I'm curious, just as we're doing these regional meetings within the higher education mind, is there a way that we can do these similar types of forums in a targeted way where the board can sponsor or find some funds to bring together employers, to bring together, these higher education minds, and possibly even some legislative ears to have these conversations, to not only hear what employers are looking for, to hear what educators can provide, and then legislators can see what they can do to support these voices in the room.
I appreciate that. I think, every time you talk to people in higher ed and you talk to people in the employment sector, and you hear really different things about what the barriers are to collaboration. And it's important to put those people in the same room. And I agree, legislators or policymakers, so that they can really hear and understand what those issues might be. And from that, grows good policy. Thank you. Anyone else? We're good. Okay, we're going to move on to a really related goal. And many of you really were already touching on a lot of issues that affect workforce development. And this is my most sort of data heavy goal, so bear with me. It's really interesting data though. So workforce development needs, we're defining them as the credentials and skills, post-secondary in this instance, to fill current jobs and those that are likely to exist in the future if nothing dramatically different happens in our economy. And these skills are both technical skills and also these essential or soft skills that some of us have been already talking about. Now, I want to point out that technical and soft skills are not mutually exclusive. We do not have to continue to think that if you get a technical credential, there's no soft skills embedded, or vice versa. I think part of the challenge is to make sure that as we're thinking about workforce needs and thinking about what's going to ensure that someone is effective or successful in the workforce, that we think about both kinds. So thank you, Terry, for that. All right, I'm going to just give you a lot of information about our workforce gaps because they're substantial. So in 2023, there was an analysis that we made public showing that our credential supply, our post-secondary credential supply fell short of employers' demands and resulted in a workforce credential gap of 61,000 in 2023. And that's presuming that we're not importing lots of folks to meet those skills. So this is just our production in Pennsylvania. And you see the difference. You see sort of across the state where those shortages lie. You see a lot of associate or certificate credentials, but you see vast variation by region. If we don't do anything to address these workforce credential goals, gaps, by 2032, that gap is going to be well over 200,000 people. What does that mean? That means that companies that can't find the workers they need here may go elsewhere. They may shut down. We don't like the future if we can't figure out how to address those needs. So that is what is pressing upon us right now, here and now. But I also want to show you variation by region because this is really fascinating. So if you look at these workforce gaps, you see that the biggest the region with the biggest work credential gaps. So that's the difference between the credentials that a job requires and the credentials that we're producing is in the Southeast. 48% of those jobs cannot be filled by the credentials that we are producing in the Southeast. That doesn't mean people from other parts of the state can't come in and fill those jobs, but it's important for us to think about this region as its own little higher education ecosystem. That's really a critical gap. It's also true that most of the jobs in the Commonwealth are in Southeastern Pennsylvania. So, you know, there's that to think about as well. When we look at Southeastern Pennsylvania and we look at our attainment levels, we see that compared to Pennsylvania as a whole, we see, you know, in some instances slightly higher than average attainment rates, and in some instances a little bit lower. We have a wealth of institutions in our region, which is something people keep talking about. That is an incredible base on which to meet these workforce credential gaps. So that's the good news in Southeastern Pennsylvania. When we look by type of credential, we see in Southeastern Pennsylvania that the biggest gap is with bachelor's degrees. That is not true in some other parts of our state. When we look at these data in other parts, we often find that associates and certificates are what is needed to fill those workforce credential gaps. And that's simply reflective of the different economies and different employers that we have in different parts of the state. And then we can dig even deeper and we can start to figure out, and we have data far more granular than this, but we can start to figure out where the holes are in Southeastern Pennsylvania. So we see the managerial, business, and professional office jobs are the biggest gap right now. But we also see healthcare, which we see in every part of the state. We see education in every part of the state. So we see similar gaps, but in Southeastern PA, that managerial gap is unique to this region. And then we can again look at the gaps by the type of credential that are required. So those managerial jobs, the vast majority of those need to be filled by people with bachelor's degrees. But you see in different areas, like in trade maintenance and repair, obviously we've got baccalaureate degree credentials that would be filling those gaps. So I'm putting all of this up in front of you, not to make you absorb all of it at once, but to simply give you a flavor of the kinds of information that we have about our workforce credential gap in the Commonwealth, but also in specific regions of the state. Because when I imagine that we go to actually solve these and we sit down with higher education leaders and employers, these are the kind of data that are going to help us chart concrete solutions to the workforce credential gaps that we have. That was a lot of data and not a lot of time, but I think you get the general picture here. We've got some work to do. What should we know specifically about the Southeastern region? And what strategies should we be using to address these workforce needs in the region?
Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Sarah Hollister from the City of Philadelphia Mayor's Office of Education. I could go on for hours about this goal, but I think one of the biggest things is timely data, right? So being able to, that data is already old, right? So how do we have the timely data so that we can make the case and so that we can also see which programs are working and getting folks exactly into jobs. So that's a state longitudinal data system. The second thing is in the Southeast region, we have so many colleges and people can university hop or college hop. And so how are we doing a better job of credit articulation and prior learning credit and making sure that those are actually truly stacking up to a credential that then gets them to that bachelor's that then gets them into the workforce and the living wage job.
So the strategy is stackable credentials that are really stackable.
That are really stackable, yes. And from non-credit to credit and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I'm standing in between my partners here from CCP, I have to highlight the Cato Scholarship as a model in the Southeast region to scale for affordable access to college.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. She has a mind of her own. She's just going around people.
How you doing? My name is Anthony Genexi. I'm the Dean of Business and Professional Studies at Montgomery County Community College. I want to add upon that, it's not just the stackable credentials, but also the relationships that we're building with the industries in order to promote that, okay, you've got this credential that got you into that job. Now they need this credential. How can you support your workforce in order to do that? And how does the relationship with the institution, with the State Board of Higher Education help you in that? Somebody had spoken earlier about incentives for internships, which is great. But when an organization is worried about, I'm going to be training somebody to go somewhere else, that relationship, that incentive doesn't really help them. Building those relationships that can create those pathways for students to get the credentials, to not only get the job, but then building the relationship with the organization to help them to develop their workforce and to provide those stackable credentials for their workforce, and providing some sort of pathway and relationship with the workforce itself, with the employers themselves. Our clients, our customers are no longer just students. It is the industry. And the more that we can create those pathways that students and quite frankly families can see at the end of this credential, I'm not on my own to figure out what to do with it. But really it's bringing them through and building those relationships with the industry so that they commit and build a relationship with that industry, with that organization. Because from my own research, I know that a big concern for organizations is, one, development of their workforce. They don't know how to do it. And they can't always afford to have learning and development programs within their organization. So how can we provide that gap or fill that gap for them? And then two is the turnover. It is very costly to have high turnover. So if we're building those relationships and we are having students identify with that industry, that organization, and it ties them to the relationship that they've already built with their higher education institution, because that institution is now following them into the industry and saying, we are continuing to train and upskill and develop you through those relationships.
So what I'm starting to hear is an emphasis not just on making sure that students, while they're still in college, have access to employers, but that there's a continual feedback loop or loop between the employers and the higher ed institutions as they seek to invest in their own employees and upskill. So that's that's like a pipeline approach to a relationship that exists between higher ed institutions and employers. Thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Ben Rusolowski, and I'm the president of Delaware Valley University in Doylestown. We were founded in 1896 as the National Farm School. I represent one of more than 80 independent nonprofit institutions in the Commonwealth, and one of the things I relish about being with that cohort is our ability to respond to industry needs in a quick and nimble way. At our institution, as we talk about what might be scalable, we have a required experiential learning program. It was part of our founding. It exists today. All students complete it. And when it was founded and as it evolves, it receives constant feedback from business and community partners. Our students complete internships, career exploration experiences, student research projects, community service, but each partner evaluates not just the student, but we also separately require feedback on what they're seeing with our programs, what they're seeing with the outcomes in our students, what they're seeing as gaps, what they're seeing as credential needs in the industry, et cetera. We take that information, hundreds of data points a year over 4 terms, and we bring that together for our advisory boards across our schools. And then we marry that with what we're seeing in the county's Workforce and Economic Development Board, and bring that together, and it informs future directions for us. Some of you probably recently saw we're expanding our animal science program into poultry science with RACP funding from the Commonwealth. That's a direct outcome of that type of feedback from the employers that host our students, as well as from the regional and state government in terms of workforce development needs. It's also what brought, some of you have visited the new terrain location in this area. Our E360 program, experiential learning program, brought terrain to us looking to meet a community need for more event, retail, and restaurant space in Doylestown. Put a facility on our campus. Our students work there. We partner together to produce food for the facility there, but we also have invested jointly in vertical farming, which has led to a foray into urban agriculture and donating product jointly with a business to the Bucks County Opportunity Council to provide fresh produce for those who otherwise wouldn't have access. I mention all of this because it leads to many things. One is stronger feedback from businesses and community partners.
So that's one strategy.
It
stronger
is, and
feedback.
how we scale that up.
Okay.
The other thing it leads to too is connections between students, and I've heard it mentioned here, and how we can provide incentives or other tools to help more businesses not only host and support internships, but have those lead to employment that keeps students in the Commonwealth. I just would mention too that I believe too that we need, as part of a strategy, to enhance the relationship between higher ed and the businesses and partners that are reflected in the workforce and economic development
Sure.
boards across the state. I think there's good work being done, but I think there's the opportunity to do more. Obviously, that's going to need some funding, but I think that higher ed sits ready to continue to meet the needs of that stakeholder. We talk about our students a lot, but we also have to talk, and I've heard it mentioned here today, about businesses, industry,
sure.
and community partners. And so one thing I would say to you too is that you talked about putting together focus groups after this. I would encourage you to invite institutions who've developed these types of partnerships, who are seeing tangible outcomes,
Yeah.
look at their best practices and see how we can aggregate that up
Agreed.
into something that's scalable.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Couple more.
Yes.
Farah Jimenez, Philadelphia Education Fund, and we're in the K-12 space with respect to college and career access and success. And yet I feel the need to voice a strategy here. When it comes to trying to build our workforce, we have talent that we can import and upskill, but we also have homegrown talent. And many of the young people who are attending some of our K-12 systems are not well prepared to really, even with some secondary education, to be able to enter some of these managerial positions, some of these STEM fields. And so to me, part of what I'd love to see as part of this conversation, I'm grateful that there's a post-secondary element to workforce development when you're defining it here, because sometimes it's an either or conversation. So I'm grateful that post-secondary is viewed as part of workforce development. But I would argue for a strategy that includes the K-12 system as well. So some examples are, for certain industries, a student needs to enter their post-secondary institution with an idea of what it is they wish to complete. Because if you decide junior year that now you want to be a doctor, it's way too late if you haven't made the right choices in the first few years of your college education. And so one of the strategies we've implemented in Philadelphia is we have what we call the College Access and Success Ecosystem. It's a collective impact strategy that we launched just about 2 years ago. We've had 80 members, and the intention behind it is to bring together all the nonprofits, but also post-secondary institutions. The School District of Philadelphia sits at the table on the steering committee. We have members, we have the Mayor's Office of Education involved, and we're looking to also invite industry so that together we're looking to have a continual conversation about what strategies we can be implementing and testing together that will help us support kids from K through post-secondary into career. So we're not sitting in segmented isolation, but we're working in this collective way to solve for those
Thank you.
challenges and to implement some strategies.
Thank you. And it sounds like that might be something that could be done at a regional level across the Commonwealth. And honestly, maybe there are other examples of that, but it sounds like it's a particularly rich way to overcome some of the silos that we exist in.
Hey there. So my name's Kevin Gefeller. I'm actually public relations for St. Joe's. You're probably like, why is Kevin talking?
That's what
Anyway,
your
so I
president is saying.
so I was a former reporter in New York, and I know there's something right now, and again, excuse my ignorance in the room. But something I reported on frequently in New York was BOCES, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with maybe BOCES or New Visions in New York. You may or may not be.
Why don't you just tell everybody what you're talking about?
So it's basically a program in New York that's a career exploration program for high school students. It's something that you interview and apply for. My girlfriend did it, and she was able to go and experience shadow different careers, experience different types of things, just to get a taste for it. Kind of like what we were talking about in terms of, hey, maybe you go and you want to be a doctor, go and shadow someone that is being a physician. So I know PA has something like that in the kind of the career technical centers that we have, but it seems to be more centralized in New York compared to PA. So I guess my proposition would be to think about something like that, like a BOCES, a New Visions program that takes place right here in PA.
Thank you for that. We certainly see that there are needed connections between career technical education, higher education. Again, this notion we keep hearing about again and again about pathways. How do we get students thinking about what pathway they're going on? And how do we get them into those pathways? Another mechanism that we use and we can use increasingly effectively is dual credit, especially if we align dual credit to high need jobs so that students can begin to accumulate the credentials and the skills that they need to fill those jobs. Do we have people online, Allie? Nobody online, so.
Not as, but I will encourage folks online, if you have a comment, please just raise your hand.
Okay. I will move on to the, there's a gentleman in the back that is consistently raising his hand. We need to acknowledge you.
Yes, and I also think as we move forward, I might have to, we're getting short on time, so we might prioritize people who haven't commented before.
Thank you. And Lubna's getting in her steps today.
Thank you very much. I'm Patrick Clancy, President and CEO of Philadelphia Works, the city's workforce development board.
Welcome.
And just to add in the idea that we don't have any investment in the state for credentials, right? There's no program that funds it. We struggle with the idea that, you know, the work that we do, the regulations are really strict. Some schools don't want to be part of our eligible training provider list. So, but there's not a state investment in credentials. So one thought would be, you know, because a lot of these credentials cost money and they're not Pell eligible. So the challenge is how do we get individuals interested in going to some of these credential programs if there's not a pathway of opportunity as far as financing it?
So you're talking about shorter term non-degree credentials?
Yes.
Understood. That's a
This
really.
would have been the short-term Pell, but.
Pardon me?
This could have been the short-term Pell.
Now we're calling it workforce Pell, by the way. I know. It's such a rich conversation, but I agree that we need to think about, especially with regard to what our data shows us about where those workforce gaps are and how we might fill them. And the only concern that we have is to make sure that we're not financing dead-end credentials, that even if they're very short-term, making sure that people can build on them over their lifetimes. Yeah.
We do have an online comment.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to the next of our couple goals because we are a little bit up against it in terms of time.
Okay, Ms. Kane, you should be able to speak.
Thank you so much. My name is Laura Kane. I'm currently an independent consultant, but I've worked with Mastery Charter Schools for many years on post-secondary programs. I'm a member of CASE that was mentioned by Farah and Ellen Ridyard. And I've also worked with Benefits Data Trust, Pennsylvania recent company addressing student basic needs and at the Department of Ed. So my comment on strategies on this, one is that what the board could do is to help support just clear information on the pathways that exist and how a user or student, both a high school student and or adult students, could access and join those programs. There's a lot of differences about some of the CTE and workforce programs in terms of time of year, in terms of needs of what they have to be able to be eligible. In terms of where I've seen blocks, I think what could be helpful as a first thing is to better understand students who might be interested in these pathways but aren't going and why. So maybe a recommendation could be to do a more qualitative, research. This couldn't happen by September by any means, but it could be, let's go better understand where are students blocked from entering the workforce for those who want to. And I'll just mention that when I was working with students, for example, high school students that we were trying to motivate there, they weren't allowed to apply until they had their GED or a high school diploma. But yet they were in high school and they had the supports from counselors, but they weren't able to actualize it. So that's a policy thing perhaps, or whether that's policy government or policy, other elements or other entities to look at the timing and how to create better timing and alignment. Second, another example is like having a driver's license. So working specifically in Southeast Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, even more specifically, many students, including my own kids who were educated in the Philadelphia system, do not have a driver's license. And so things like that, and looking at where could there be specific blocks and then where could there be policy solutions to help unlock them.
Thank you. And one of the things that you're bringing up has specifically to do, of course, with high school students. And we are having meetings with high school students. We have one next week with high school students in the Pittsburgh area who are considering college, not necessarily locked in, not necessarily the high flyers that always go to college, but to really try to understand from their perspectives, what are you thinking about college? Are you going to go? You're not going to go? If you're not going to go, why? Those are the kinds of sort of root cause analyses that I think are really important in the development of a strategic plan. Okay, I know we could talk forever about this. I'm going to move us on to the last two goals because I want to respect your time. Okay, here's another goal that the board adopted, a draft goal: ensure accountability and efficient use of state funds. So we are charged at the State Board of Higher Education to collect data and offer recommendations to promote all the things that we're talking about, including efficient and effective use of state dollars in higher education. So achieving accountability and efficiency might include tracking and analyzing a range of data and information. And again, people are talking about the need for data, that we need to be informed by data to make good policy. I hear that loud and clear in this room, and I hear that in every room. So this is part of that. And some of that data and information would be used to develop policy recommendations that the board might want to put forward to the legislature and to the administration. And so related to this is a notion that more transparency is important to everybody when state dollars are involved. And so that's sort of the context in which this goal was developed by the board. And a few things just to know about Pennsylvania. We have a rich array of higher ed institutions. We are also remarkably decentralized. And so all of our colleges and universities collect a wealth of data, which is terrific. But we don't have any way to look across those institutions in a consistent way at the same data points and to really use that to inform everybody's thinking about higher education. So there's no standard mechanism for showing how state resources provide a return on investment. We have individual sectors, of course, reporting a very rich array of data, but the elements are often defined differently and they're not comparable. So that creates a challenge. And national data systems, of course, are very useful and they offer a lot of insights, but they are obviously under threat, which was something that wasn't true when I developed this particular slide, but unfortunately it is now. And they're also incomplete and cannot be combined. So lots of data. But the problem is the data is not always as usable as we might want it to be if what we're thinking about is how do we strengthen the entire sector. So how might then we think about the strategies that would be needed to ensure accountability and efficient use of state funds? What do we need in place? What are the things that we need to make sure that we know ourselves how these state dollars are used well, but that we can also reassure taxpayers, the legislature, et cetera, that their dollars are serving their needs? We have a comment down here. Thank you.
The irony is that if the increased reporting burden takes increased funding to pay for that. So I wish I had this, I knew of a cost-effective strategy to recommend, but that's the irony. So keep that in mind. And don't do it like financial value transparency and gainful employment. That was a train wreck.
I think one of the challenges, though, is, and one of the things that we're actively trying to think about is how do we utilize existing information? Like we understand that we don't want to place undue additional burden on institutions that are already oftentimes, struggling, right? But we also need to think about, like, just from a really practical perspective, what kind of information does the State Board of Higher Education need at its disposal to make good decisions and recommendations? What kind of information do we all need in order to make that happen? Whether it be families thinking about cost, a student thinking about what major he or she might want to take to make sure that they are able to enter the career that they're looking for. All of that kind of information is stuff that may be available in pockets, but is not systematically available. And the challenge is, how do we get there without creating something that's so heavy that it would collapse in its own weight, right? Other comments? No?
Hi, I'm Nicole Duffy. Currently work with the nonprofit independent colleges, but prior lives worked in the Department of Ed budget office, so we've been doing data a long, long time. Some points I'd like to say is I agree there's tons of data out there, tons of accountability in some of the state grant programs, and when you're looking at funding low-income kids and Act 101, there's a ton of reporting that happens to FIA that's already in existence, which kind of shows, I think, the effective use there. We report to bond agencies, we report to the federal government. I think we report to College Board. There's tons of things. I think maybe something that could be a strategy would be to, if PDE could set up a landing page where already the accountability and the reporting we're doing is collected in the same manner and form. It comes into PD and then they synthesize it, because I think until we understand all we have, it's really hard to say we need more. So I think that's something maybe to look at, is just maybe being the repository, especially given what's happening at the federal level. Not that it might go away even,
right,
but that it might take a long time for them to post things. And so those are some of the things that we've been talking about. How do we take what we already have and actually know what we already have,
Agreed.
and try to reduce the burden by reporting it in the same way, but
Right.
maybe creating that repository. So that's
Right.
something we've talked about as well.
I think that's a great idea, Nicole, and that's something that we're actively thinking about as well. How to create consistency among the kinds of data that institutions are already collecting.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Kate. We have someone online as
Oh,
well.
sure.
Okay, Miss Sixsmith, you should be able to unmute yourself.
And I am. Thank you. Dr. Danielle Kern-Sixsmith over at DeSales University in the School of Education. And it reminded me of the Institute of Educational Statistics, God bless their souls or rest their souls. They had the Regional Educational Laboratory Program model, where nationally they had the regions dedicated to laboratories that did a lot of these roles. So just like our intermediate units handle educational services outside of our K-12s and higher ed, the Regional Educational Laboratory conducted a number of regional focused outcomes that might be a way to centralize this for Southeast and then have the different education labs come together to provide the statewide information, if you're familiar with the model.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's something the state's going to need to think about in the absence of some, rich federal resources for research. How are we going to, as a Commonwealth, make sure that we replace some of those data sources and find a way to continue to have an information flow that, as Sarah pointed out, needs to also be timely. In the interest of time, I literally have 6 minutes left, and I have one more goal to get in front of y'all, and I'm going to do that. And this is a goal, the last goal that the state board adopted, which is strengthen the fiscal health and stability of the higher education sector. So the board is explicitly charged with providing assistance in navigating fiscal challenges to higher education institutions that request it, and also recommending strategies to strengthen the sector. So just a couple things about this. We know that across the country, we have higher ed institutions, that our whole sector is really having, encountering some unprecedented times with regard to things like dropping enrollments, continued challenges and questions about the validity of higher education, regardless of whether or not those are valid. There's a lot of factors that are sort of playing into some difficulties that some in our sector are encountering. We know that multiple higher ed institutions have closed, as well as private licensed schools. And others are contemplating the closures and mergers, not sure what they're going to do yet. Some regions have too few. So the impact when an institution closes or merges varies by where the institution is. Some regions already have too few institutions. Some regions have a richness of institutions. So that is a very regional reaction when an institution or a campus closes. But as they consider closures and mergers, the question for us will be how to provide that assistance. And the good news is that there are entities that have tools that already exist that can help us, that we can provide on our website for higher ed institutions, but also ensure that if there are closures or mergers, that we look at the higher education ecosystem in the particular region and make sure that we either maintain the level of higher education access that exists across the credential pipeline, or even increase it if we can. And that kind of work is going to require a lot of collaboration. There is now, the State Board of Higher Education has no formal power with regard to making sure that those ecosystems are strong in the face of fiscal instability, but we have a duty to engage collaboratively to try to figure out how that will happen. So one of the things I just wanted to put in front of you that I just came across recently is the 10-year change in the number of high school graduates that in each county that is considered in the Southeast Pennsylvania region. And you see that these numbers are not encouraging. And one of the things that I did not realize is that Philadelphia is projecting close to a 10% drop in the number of high school graduates over the next 10 years. Couple that fact with the fact that we've got, many of our institutions are tuition driven, right? So they depend on enrolling students. Couple that with our workforce credential shortage, and we really have a lot to think about in terms of how we are going to create an environment for our higher ed institutions that allows them to flourish and continue to meet the needs of the Commonwealth. One also thing to note is that overall, Pennsylvania is in the bottom 10 states with regard to the total amount of state appropriations that we make to higher education, and that includes both financial aid and direct appropriations. So we are not a state that's known for investing heavily in our higher education sector. That also can contribute to fiscal instability of the sector. So I'm going to stop there. Using our last few minutes, I would love to hear from you how we might address this particular issue in this region of the state, which is uniquely blessed with many institutions, all of which are competing for a population of students that in many instances over the next 10 years may be dropping. How do we strengthen our sector? How do we ensure that they have the tools they need to navigate through and continue to function to fulfill the economic and workforce needs of the Commonwealth? Just a couple suggestions, and then we'll have to wrap this up.
I do think that, again, strategies to bring students in from outside other states, very important. The ways that you do that, I think collectively as a voice, that Pennsylvania has an incredible higher education network that's attractive to students. We've expanded at Newman University. We're seeing many more students coming from other states to come to our institution. That's important. It combats the demographic issues and helps us to attract students to our institution and to the state. Also, I think that we have the opportunity to learn about financial stability in terms of things that institutions are doing. At Newman University, we have, like many schools, it was challenging coming out of COVID. We've had a very successful 2 years of really stabilizing our financials. And it really takes an entire institution to make sure that efficiency and health and stability is at the core of what you're doing. So I think there are examples of what institutions are doing to stabilize themselves financially and also attracting students from outside the state. And there are great examples of institutions that are doing that.
Right. So are you suggesting that we create sort of a toolkit or a set of examples of how institutions navigate through fiscal instability and make those available to other institutions that might be interested?
That would be, I think there's a lot of good learning out there that's happening at institutions that can help other college universities navigate it. And then the last thing is online education and online education, virtual education has not been mentioned much today.
Yeah, no.
It's another piece of strengthening the financials and also attracting students to our institutions.
Thank you very much. She's.
I really just wanted to end on a note of thanks to this board for all the time you're putting in for this work. It is empowering to be in the room with all of these people. I've gotten a sense of some of the stories that you're telling, especially at this time in our national conversation on higher education. It can be so demoralizing when the transformative work that so many of you do is reduced to talking points designed to be wielded as a wedge in public debates. We endure that every day. All of us who are working in higher ed, I'm grateful that you all persist. And I'm grateful that the governor has created this state board that will help us do the jobs that we're so committed to better. I want to end by thanking St. Joe's for hosting this piece today. St. Joe's has been home to generations of first-generation college graduates, as it was for 6 members of my family, and continues to do that. And that's the most noble thing about the work that all of you do. You're changing trajectories, not of one person, but of entire families. And all of the work that this state board is doing will only help us do that better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to end by thanking everybody in this room and online for your interest and your commitment to this goal that we have set for ourselves, because everybody has an interest in higher education, everybody in the Commonwealth. And our job is to figure out how to take it into the next chapter, make sure it's strong and vigorous and ready for the challenges that exist, understanding that the headwinds are strong, but so are the opportunities. So everything that you've said today is being collected. We are collecting all feedback from all forms, and we will be utilizing that feedback to identify themes across all of our goals, and we will be producing a summary of that feedback that will be posted on our website, just to ensure that everybody understands that your feedback is meaningful and we will be using it. A more detailed summary will be provided to the board itself as it begins to craft its strategic plan. So we have 2 more hearings. We have one next week in Allegheny County, Community College of Allegheny, and we have one in Erie in the middle of May. And we are looking forward to those as well. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate. Yes, and my board chair is going to speak. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Kate, so much, and thank you, everybody. What a fantastic discussion. We're 1 minute over, so I'll take us 1 minute and 30 seconds over. I want to thank, first of all, PD Secretary Carrie Rowe for being there. I understand you're there. I'm sorry I'm not there to see you in person, but I am waving, and I thank you for your support with this. And again, we are all creating a vision for a new vision for higher education in Pennsylvania that is going to take us into, the 21st century and possibly beyond. It's so important what we're doing. Kate talked about the next meeting, which is April 24th at Allegheny County Community College, which I'm very much looking forward to. We'll send you out an agenda of materials prior to that meeting. And with that, I guess I formally adjourn and thank you all again so very, very much.
Thanks, Cindy. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Huh.